8-year-old Marcus Thompson stood on his desk, arms spread wide like an airplane, grinning as his classmates giggled. But his jaw was tight, his laugh a beat too loud. "Marcus Thompson, get down this instant!" Mrs. Rodriguez's voice cut through the laughter like a sharp blade. Marcus hopped down, that same bright smile fixed in place. "Sorry, Mrs. R. I was just showing everyone aerodynamics." What his classmates didn't know was that behind that cheerful mask lived a little boy whose world was crumbling. 2 months earlier, Marcus had lived in the yellow house on Water Street with Mom, Dad, and 5-year-old Emma. But lately, a heavy quiet had moved into their home, the kind of silence that felt louder than any noise. His parents didn't look at each other anymore, and dinner times felt like everyone was holding their breath, waiting for a storm that never broke. Marcus would sit at the table and tell his fastest, brightest jokes, anything to see a spark of the old smiles on his parents' faces. But their eyes remained tired, fixed on their plates. Across the table, Emma would just squeeze her stuffed rabbit tight. Eventually, the grown-up talk happened in hushed whispers behind closed doors. Marcus was told that he and Emma were going to stay at Grandma Rose's for a while. The big yellow house was being packed into boxes, and his family was changing into something he didn't quite recognize anymore. Grandma Rose lived in a brick apartment building that smelled like lemon oil furniture polish and something always cooking on the stove. Her walls were covered with family photos from happier times, and her kitchen window looked out onto a small community garden where tomatoes grew in neat rows. "This is temporary, sweetheart," she told Marcus on their first night. Marcus nodded, forcing that bright smile. "I know, Grandma. It'll be fun." But inside, a small voice whispered that nothing would ever be the same. Emma adapted quickly, content with Grandma's vintage dolls and cookie baking. But Marcus felt caged, all his worry trapped inside with nowhere to go. So I learned to let it out the only way that felt safe, by making people laugh. At his new school, Roosevelt Elementary, Marcus became the boy with the endless supply of jokes. He made faces during math, told wild stories about his imaginary pet dinosaur, and once convinced half the class that the head lunch lady was really an alien in disguise. Mrs. Rodriguez began noticing patterns. Marcus's disruptions always came during quiet moments, times when his mind might wander. His antics got wilder on Mondays after weekends of wondering if his parents would call to say everything was fixed. One day, during silent reading, Marcus's mind drifted to the phone call he'd overheard the night before, his mom crying to Grandma about lawyers. Suddenly, he couldn't sit still. He jumped up and began an elaborate monkey dance, complete with chattering sounds. "Marcus!" Mrs. Rodriguez's voice was sharp. "That's enough." But Marcus couldn't stop. The performance had taken over, his classmates' laughter the only thing keeping panic at bay. "I'm sending a note to your grandmother." For the first time all year, Marcus's smile cracked. That afternoon, Marcus trudged up 2 flights of stairs, a sealed envelope heavy in his backpack. After dinner, when he handed over the note, Grandma Rose read silently. "Marcus," she said gently, "want to tell me what's really going on?" Marcus's smile wavered. I was just having fun. Everyone was laughing." "You're not bad, sweetheart." She pulled him into a hug that smelled like vanilla. "But it sounds like you might have some big feelings that are hard to handle." For a moment, Marcus felt his mask slip. His throat tightened, his eyes stinging. But then he pulled the smile back up. "Nope, I'm fine. Just being silly." But Grandma Rose had raised 3 children. She knew struggling when she saw it. The next afternoon, Grandma Rose suggested they visit the community garden together. "I need to check on my plat before the rain comes." Marcus followed her down the worn path between raised beds bursting with late spring growth. Other gardeners waved as they passed. Mr. Chu with his bok choy, Mrs. Okafor harvesting collard greens. Grandma Rose's plot was in the back corner, a wild tangle compared to the neat rows around it. Tomatoes climbed their cages, basil sprawled between them, and along the edge, tall spikes of small yellow flowers waved in the breeze. "What are those?" Marcus asked, drawn to their cheerful brightness. "Agrimony. Beautiful, isn't it?" Grandma Rose knelt beside the plants. "Come closer." Marcus crouched down. The flowers were surprisingly delicate. 5 yellow petals arranged like tiny stars, dozens of them climbing each spike. They looked happy, he thought, sunny and carefree. "Touch the stem carefully," Grandma Rose said, "below the flowers." Marcus reached out and immediately jerked his hand back. "Ow, it's sticky." "Not sticky. Hooked." She showed him the small burrs clinging to her sleeve. "See? The flowers are all brightness and cheer up top. But underneath, these little hooks grab onto everything that passes. Won't let go." Marcus examined the burrs more closely. Dozens of tiny hooks, each one curved and desperate. He tried to pull one off Grandma's sleeve. It clung stubbornly, even when he tugged. "Why does it do that?" he asked. "It's how seeds travel. The plant holds on tight to anyone passing by, hoping they'll carry it somewhere new." She looked at him thoughtfully. "I've always found it interesting, something that looks so cheerful on the surface, but underneath it's holding on for dear life." Marcus stared at the bright yellow flowers, something uncomfortable stirring in his chest. Over the next week, Marcus found himself drawn back to the Agrimony. He'd sit on the wooden bench near Grandma's plot, supposedly doing homework, but really watching the tall stalks sway. He noticed things. How the flowers only fully opened on sunny days, closing up tight when clouds rolled in. How the bright blooms attracted bees and butterflies, everyone fooled by the cheerful display. How the burrs below waited, ready to cling. One evening, after another exhausting day of performing at school, Marcus sat on the bench while Grandma Rose watered. The sun was setting, and he watched the agrimony flowers beginning to close, petals folding inward. "They're hiding," he said quietly. Grandma Rose looked up. "What's that?" "The flowers. When it gets dark, they hide. They close up." He paused, his voice smaller. "Like they can't keep smiling anymore." Grandma Rose set down her watering can and sat beside him. She didn't say anything, just waited. Marcus picked at a splinter on the bench. At school today, everyone was talking about Father's Day, about breakfast in bed, and fishing trips and stuff. His voice was still light, still carrying that false brightness. "I told them my dad is teaching me to fly a helicopter." "And is he?" The smile flickered, held. "No." A long silence. A bee buzzed past, heading home. The agrimony swayed. "I don't even know if he'll call on Father's Day," Marcus whispered. "But I couldn't say that. I couldn't just sit there being the sad kid while everyone else was so happy." "So you made up a story instead." "I always make up stories." His voice cracked slightly. "Happy ones. Funny ones. So no one knows." He stopped. "Knows what?" Marcus looked at the agrimony, at the bright yellow flowers closing up in the dimming light, at the bird hooks below that clung so desperately to everything. "That I'm scared," he finally said, and the smile fell away completely. "I'm scared all the time, Grandma. I'm scared Mom and Dad won't get back together. I'm scared Emma will forget what it was like before. I'm scared everyone will see how scared I am and think I'm weak or weird or—" His voice broke. Tears came then, hot and unstoppable. Months of them held back by jokes and grins and manic performances. He tried to stop, tried to pull the smile back up, but he couldn't. The mask wouldn't fit anymore. Grandma Rose pulled him close. "Oh, sweetheart, you've been holding on so tight." Marcus sobbed against her shoulder. his fingers clutching her cardigan the way the Agrimony burrs clutched everything passing by, desperate, exhausted, and unable to let go. "I thought if I was happy enough, it wouldn't hurt so much," he gasped. "I thought if I made everyone laugh, no one would worry about me, and I wouldn't have to feel." "All the scared, sad feelings underneath?" He nodded against her shoulder. They sat there as the light faded and the Agrimony closed up completely, the cheerful blooms hidden until morning. Around them, the garden settled into twilight sounds, crickets, distant traffic, somebody's wind chimes. Finally, Marcus pulled back, wiping his face with his sleeve. He felt empty and strange, but also lighter. The burr hooks had finally loosened. "What if I can't keep pretending everything's okay?" he asked. "What if I stop being funny?" Grandma Rose smoothed his hair. "You'll still be funny, Marcus. That's part of who you are. But maybe you don't have to be funny all the time. Maybe sometimes you can just be sad, or scared, or angry. People won't like that. People who matter will. And you know what? These bright yellow flowers," she gestured toward the Agrimony, "they bloom every single day, even knowing they'll close up at night. The brightness is real, Marcus, but so is everything underneath. Both can be true." Marcus looked at the darkened stalks, barely visible now. "Do they get tired from holding on so tight?" "I imagine they do." "I'm really tired, Grandma." "I know you are." They sat together in the gathering dark, and for the first time in months, Marcus didn't feel the need to fill the silence with a joke. Somewhere in the garden, the Agrimony waited for morning, when it would open bright and yellow again. But for now, it rested, closed and honest in the darkness. And so did Marcus. Marcus's story shows us something important about hiding behind a smile. Just like the Agrimony plant, with its cheerful yellow flowers and desperate clinging burrs underneath, some children learn to show only brightness while everything else stays hidden. The Agrimony flower essence is for the child who seems perpetually happy, who deflects every difficult feeling with a joke or a performance. These are the kids who make everyone laugh while carrying enormous worry inside. They've learned that being cheerful keeps people from worrying about them, or perhaps keeps their own painful feelings at bay. But all that pretending is exhausting. The flower essence doesn't erase their natural humor or joy. Those are real and valuable parts of who they are. Instead, it helps them feel safe enough to let the mask slip sometimes. To say, "I'm scared," or "I'm sad," without feeling like they're burdening others or falling apart. It's for the child who says, "I'm fine," a little too brightly when something is clearly wrong. The one who acts out in class, not from mischief, but from anxiety they can't express. The child who has decided, often unconsciously, that their job is to keep everyone else from worrying, even at the cost of their own emotional honesty. Agrimony essence whispers, "You don't have to be bright all the time. People who love you can handle your real feelings. In fact, they want to know them." Like Marcus discovering he could close up sometimes, like the Agrimony flowers at dusk, children need permission to rest from their performance, to know that all their feelings, not just the cheerful ones, deserve space and care. Because true healing doesn't come from pretending everything is fine. It comes from being able to say, finally, "I'm really tired," and having someone sit with you in the darkness until morning comes again.